Vander Family Dealerships, the Penn State All Sports Museum, Lion Country Kia, Ben Franklin Technology Partners, Bobby Ray Hall Honda of State College, the Applied Research Laboratory at Penn State University, Joel Confer Toyota BMW, the Dalton Group at Morgan Stanley, Center County Recycling, Bobby Ray Hall Lexus of Lewistown, the Student Bookstore, W.R. Hickey Beer Distributor, Roofing King, Cata, Triangle Heating and Cooling, Valley View Retirement Community, Happy Valley Sports and Entertainment Alliance, and by Celebrities at the Ramada. Now, the Penn State Football Tailgate Show on 99.5, 107.5 The Bus, Bigfoot Country Legends, and simulcast on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Now, here's Thomas Frank Carr and Landon Tengwall.
The first ever college football playoff is here. It kicked off last night, yes, with Notre Dame emphatically winning against Indiana, but today is the real start, especially for Nittany Lions fans. 3 games, starting with Penn State SMU at noon. It's snowing this morning here in Happy Valley. The home field playoff advantage for the Nittany Lions could not be more real and fully expressed. And that's one of the reasons why we're inside. Here's the deal. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. This is former Penn State offensive lineman Landon Tengwall. I bought a coat. I was ready to go, but there's some technical issues. There's some health of the staff issues. And then there's hey, it's cold and lithium ion doesn't really work well when it's below freezing. But I want everyone to know we're representing you out there, the brave people that are out there in the tailgate lots. I wanted to bring that spirit to the show today, Landon. You wanted to bring some Christmas spirit. Appreciate that.
I did. I shout out my girlfriend, Sarah. She got me this really nice little Snoopy little sweater, and T. Frank gave me a text last night. And, well, I guess it's time, right?
It's time.
Is it time? Because we were talking. He said, hey, ugly sweaters, question mark?
Ugly sweaters?
And I appreciate the representation of you, what you would have been wearing.
Yes.
But there we go, bang.
There we go.
What exactly even is that, actually? I forgot to ask.
So my wife's mother is English, and these are Christmas puddings. So it's a very English Christmas sweater with Christmas puddings. I've never had a Christmas pudding before. I've had trifle when we go out for Christmas, but I've never had one of these before. But this is the English representation of an ugly Christmas sweater, which I have to say, I think this thing is truly awful. I think this is truly an ugly Christmas sweater.
No, it's great. It's great. But hey, the holiday spirit is here, T. Frank. I'm excited. You can feel the energy. People were saying, I don't know if the stadium's gonna fill up. I was downtown a little bit last night.
Yeah. Give me a lay of the land.
Listen, I think we're looking good. I think there was actually you could actually hear the grunts and the moans of people being annoyed of how long the lines were. And so I think we're in a good place. I think the stadium will be full. I'll go right around 100K. I don't think we're not setting records or anything today.
Right.
We will be missing some student section bodies, but I think overall, I think we'll get close to 100K. And I don't mean I really mean 100K, not
the announced total.
Not the. I remember 21. It's my first year at Ball State. I'm like, there's only 85,000 people here, maybe, and then it's today's attendance 106,000, and I'm like, no, there's not. That's a lie. But I think
you got to understand they're counting all the people that are inside the stadium at the service counters. They're counting you on the sidelines as a recruit. They're counting the people that didn't show up, but they in spirit were there. So yeah, the TV crew, they're counting everyone to get to that. But I agree. I think the conversation I was having with somebody is that Penn State will have more people at this game than Notre Dame did last night, but it won't feel like that because of the size of the stadium. So that's just that's the reality of when you have a 100,000 seat stadium and you have this impromptu game with the prospect of more on the way. And that's created an interesting dynamic. And that's kind of where I want to start. We're obviously going to get into the X's and O's. That's what we do here on the show. But I do think it's important to set the scene in this first conversation here on the Penn State Football Tailgate Show to talk about, as you mentioned, the environment downtown last night, the opportunity, and also the spirit of this game. And again, kind of like the Big Ten championship game. And maybe this is because I'm a hermit that lives out in the woods now. I just don't know that I felt the same palpable excitement for this game because the palpable excitement is about the long-term view. As many people as I've had say SMU, SMU, SMU to me when I talk about, some of our sponsors that are looking into the future as well. That's a real thing that Penn State fans are doing. So you, a man of the people, what's your gauge on the excitement level of the of State College and what's going on today in Happy Valley?
I mean, I think the fact that it is the first ever playoff game for Penn State, first ever home playoff game, it means a lot. People are excited. At the same time, like you said, as much as everybody, and I put something on Twitter, I give something fun fact about Boise State, and it's just want to know SMU, what are you doing?
Yeah, right.
But at the end of the day, we can all agree we have felt it from the fan base. Everybody's talking about Boise State. I've had people tell me they're saving for the Orange Bowl.
Exactly.
T. Frank.
Yes.
So
yes.
I don't want to hear it on us. Everybody's kind of doing it. Yes. Looking ahead. Not only are we favored by 8.5 today, we will be favored by more than 10 points against Boise State in the second round of the college football playoffs.
Yeah.
So I understand why. But at the same time, we have seen this entire college football season, nothing is guaranteed.
Yeah.
I think this is the most just sporadic, random season with upsets. You can't be looking that far ahead. I promise you that James Franklin and the team necessarily are
they aren't.
They are not.
Yeah.
They are not.
Yeah.
It is 1-0 is something that I've talked about before, and that fans might think it's a little tiring. And it's like, okay, do the players actually care about this? And I'll tell you, eventually it gets to a point where you first get there and you're like, oh yeah, 1-0, but then you're in the locker room. It's like week 6, and you're talking about Ohio State. That's like week 9. And there's guys that are like, yo, cut that. Like, we're not doing that. We're talking about this week. We're talking about whatever, Rutgers right now.
Yeah.
So it really does start to trickle down, and you just hear it enough where it gets into your brain. And it's a little bit harder with the opportunity if you're a player and you're like, dude, I mean, it's been talked about. The fact, we can go to Arizona next week.
Yeah.
That's been talked about. Like, I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah.
But at the same time, guys will rein that in really quick and say, all right, we're focused on SMU today. And look, this is a SMU team that is 1 year removed from being in the AAC, not the ACC, the AAC.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing is when you are transitioning from, we're like you said, T. Frank said, we're going to get into the X's and O's, but when you transition from a group of 5 conference to a Power 4 conference, you can get some skill players. Kevin Jennings is homegrown, one of the only players on their roster that's homegrown at this point. But nonetheless, that offense and defensive line. I like their defensive line, but still the size isn't all the way there. The talent isn't all the way there.
Yeah.
That's what takes 3 to 4 years to kind of catch up when you change.
I was told, now admittedly, this person that I know is a Pitt fan. I was told, you got to watch out for that pass rush. That's the best pass rush in the ACC. And I went, are you sure? Like, do you know the full context of that sentence? Like, yes, that's great. Is it the best pass rush that Penn State has seen this year? I don't know. I don't know about that. It is a good, like you mentioned, it's a good team. I think Rhett Lashley has done a great job going to the portal and finding as many of those Power 5 bodies, those big physical compete to get to the college football playoff bodies as possible. But when you're making decisions building a team, this is what I talked about with the Oregon. When you're making decisions building a team, either intentionally or unintentionally, you have to make choices. Are you going to favor size? Are you going to favor speed, power, athleticism? What is your brand of football? If you're Oregon, you don't have to choose. If you're SMU, you've got to make some choices. And I think they've done a great job of building that team. But what those choices will bear out on the field today is going to be what decides the game in a lot of different ways up front. And that's the conversation to me today is SMU. It's really impressive. I think the same conversation about Kirk Cinetti and Indiana. It's really impressive what he was able to do in 1 year at Indiana. But you're bringing in 30 transfer portal players to Indiana. It's not the same conversation as bringing in players to Ohio State and to Oregon, or even the selective job that Penn State has done in the transfer portal with getting players here to be starters and impact players over the course of the time that James Franklin has used the portal the way he has. It's just different. And when you're making those choices lead to schematic advantages and disadvantages. And I'm excited to talk about that with you today on the show.
Yeah, I think part of it, too, is culture. Like, there is a transfer portal culture at SMU that we do not have here at Penn State. Let's talk about it. Preston Stone, their backup quarterback, is in the transfer portal. He is in State College today. He will be backing up Kevin Jennings. People naturally then say, why can't Bo do that? Well, hey, that's not our culture. Their culture is that 20 out of their 22 starters are from the transfer portal. Our culture is that we had 12, 13 players leave and only brought in like 6 to 10 players. Like that is how we operate at Penn State, and that might change because college football is changing as a whole. But we're trying to keep it as pure as possible, as long as possible, and it breeds that family environment. And I'm not going to sit here and say I'm not in SMU's locker room. I don't know they're a family or whatever.
Yeah,
but it's really hard when basically none of the starters came in together.
They don't know each other.
They don't know. They don't know their background. Like, most of these guys going to battle today for Penn State have been here for 3 to 4 years with their brothers.
Yeah.
They are best friends. They live together. It's all.
Well, let's talk about the advantage, too, of being Penn State. And I understand that Penn State fans sometimes are not happy with where Penn State is in the pecking order of recruiting, but they're not bringing in Landon Tengwalls at SMU. That's the point of going to the transfer portal, is you need to make those decisions to find players that are at that level. Penn State finds those players from high school and develops them. That is still a winning model, even in the NFL. Let's even so college football is professionalized, right? And you've got money, you've got the portal, which is kind of a free agency analogy here. The best teams in the NFL find talent and develop talent internally from the draft, because that is the most cost-efficient way to do it. Now, there's no real cap right now in college football, so you can spend and spend and spend, and you don't have to be worried about a bottom line. But eventually, the money does run out, and for a team that wants to be, I think, emotionally responsible as well as fiscally responsible with who you're playing and who you're paying and how you're treating everyone on the roster, that's another area where that family atmosphere and that family culture in Penn State's development and retention is, they've been very good at that, at retaining players in the portal era. And I want to get to one thing about Bo Pula, but I've talked for a while. You got something to say.
I just want to say, I don't want to get too far away from Penn State, but you're talking about the NFL and just going all out in free agency. When has the team that won the offseason in the NFL, when have they ever won anything?
Right.
And it's not only won anything, but think back, the Jets were really the last one. The Broncos, not won anything, just were disastrous.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying, like you said, it's not the same thing in college football because there's really no cap there. That is coming here in July 1st, 2025. But it is still, it matters. And I can just promise you, guys being together for 3 to 4 years is a lot different than all these guys just meeting this year. So Penn State's got a little more brotherhood on their side. This
is the point I want to make, and I've heard this conversation even yesterday on game day, and that was the most pregame I've watched in a while. Because we're usually here for pregame and generally like setting up and getting ready to do our jobs. But watching the pregame yesterday, and they're saying, well, Preston Stone is doing one thing and Bo Pula is doing the other. How many people are beating down the door for Preston Stone right now? I mean, Bo Pula had a trip to like 4 schools in a week. Like, there's a reason Bo Pula had to make that decision of, as you mentioned, it's not Penn State's culture, and James Franklin talked about it on Monday, and I understand, like, people want to take exception with some of the things he said about, well, other players are doing this, and the way he described it, and I have to take people at their word, is he has an all-in, all-out mentality at practice. You have to be locked the F in, or you're not going to be successful at Penn State at practice. And you could speak to that if that's really the case or not, but that's what he presented. And Bo, a quarterback who has to know the playbook, has to know everyone's assignments, and by the way, his Bo Pula package was not executing his job. So they had the conversation of, I've got to make some choices because I can't do everything the way that I want, which I think is what James Franklin was trying to say. He's a man's man. He's an honorable person who wants to fulfill his commitments to school, himself, and to Penn State. And school, I mean academically. And one of those things had to go because there was not enough brain space for him to do that. That's what he presented. And, that tracks from what I know of Bo Pula. I guess, do you buy that? And is that something that you think is a fair assessment? Because this has become a firestorm of conversation across college football as a kind of a turning point in the sport overall.
Yeah, I mean, being a player in the locker room with James Franklin as my head coach when the transfer portal really came about, so I can definitely speak to it. It was set very early on that if you want to enter the transfer portal, if you at all declare any, decision to go in, you're done. Your locker is cleaned out instantly. There is no maybe. And Franklin even said there may have been some wiggle room just because of the situation we're in.
Right.
And this is a very unique situation where a backup quarterback is this sought after. So it's like, I don't think this situation will really happen much at all again, just because of where we are at, but it's so rare. One thing I will say, Preston Smith, he is a legacy. His dad went there. His brother played at SMU, so he grew up as a fan. He grew up in Dallas. I knew him. We grew up together. He was like a 5-star quarterback. We were at all the All-American events, so really nice kid, good family, but winning something with SMU would mean a lot. So that is part of the reason why he's not leaving. I can tell you that. Bo, obviously being a York kid, he's a Penn Stater, but he doesn't have like family ties into the organization. That is one of the reasons why Preston Stone may still be around. Talking Bo Pula, though, that's how it is. Like I said, it's cut. It doesn't really matter who you are. You want to enter the portal, you are out of here. Now, it does open some conversation. Are you, I don't want to say mad, are you annoyed at James Franklin for the fact that he put all his eggs in the Bo Pula basket and said, hey, we're going to get Bo every so at the end of the season, we can say, hey, Bo, we're trying to give him, put the
to get him to stay.
To get him to stay, the number we put on the table, the percentage, we want to be as high as possible for snaps played in our offense. So what do you sacrifice? Ethan Grunkmeyer getting his first couple reps. And if you watch any of my content, I talked about this week, I said, hey, he would have played in Maryland and he would have played in Kent State, Ethan Grunkmeyer, if you want to be like technical, where he could have gotten in. People might say, what is a snap versus Kent State and Maryland in the fourth quarter up by 20? What does that mean? I said, hey, my first snap, I blacked out. So I'm just saying, stepping onto the football field, mentally, physically, spiritually, like it means something.
It's overwhelming.
It's very overwhelming as a football player, and to be the guy that's catching the ball, and his first play would almost surely be a handoff. But
hey,
still,
there's stuff you got to execute there. You got to turn the right way. You got to make sure you get it right in the middle of the breadbasket. All that stuff.
Exactly. So I mean, there's obviously a lot of conversation there. But I'm a little biased. Bo was one of my friends, was my teammate, all that stuff. I understand why he did it. Coach Franklin said basically these players are being put in an impossible situation and that the NCAA doesn't have their best interest, and he is exactly right. And, I guess, will we see it fixed? Probably not. I think really the only fix would probably be move the season up. I think the best fix, go to 10 games, take away 3 out-of-conference games, go straight into Big Ten play. But that would be less TV deals, less money.
Oh, you're not going backwards there.
And guess what? Those TV deals are the same deals that are now funding NIL. So that not only are we not going to take away games, we're going to add games, actually, because guess what? People are going to want more money. Universities want more NIL funding. And the TV contracts are going to say, hey, we got this. Let's just add another game. And they go, all right, we'll do it. We'll compromise the players' safety, health, all that good stuff. And that's
so. There is all of that. Oh, we could go down.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Let's get back to SMU.
We could have a
Penn
full
State,
show of that. And we're actually going to take a quick break, but we're going to get to a couple things here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. If you're listening on the radio and you're wondering where we are inside technical difficulties, and some support staff were ill this week heading into the holidays. It's the flu season. So just to execute everything, make sure we got a strong broadcast for you. We're inside. But if you're on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel, you've been here. You heard that from the very beginning. Appreciate everyone being here. Stephen Light, he donates to the channel. He says, Merry Christmas and thanks for bringing us the pregame. A. Campbell has this question here. He says, great job. I agree with the talent disparity between Penn State and SMU, but Penn State hasn't blown out lesser talented teams this year. What's the key to doing so today? That's going to be like, we'll answer this right now, but we are going to get a little bit into that. Well, we're going to get all the way into that later in the show. But just off the top of your head, off the top of the dome, what's the biggest thing for Penn State to do in this game to make that happen? Because he's right. They have not blown out a lot of teams this
I'll go
year.
2 things. Number 1, Penn State rushing attack. If we can go 250, control the ground game, control the clock, this could get out of hand very fast. Guess what? You pair that with turnovers, especially from Kevin Jennings. 4 turnovers in the last 3 games for Jennings. If we do that, we win. Clemson on the first drive had a strip sack, and they got the ball in the ACC championship on the plus 25-yard line going in. If Abdul Carter and company can make an impact, Jalen Reed rushing the passer a little bit, I think that is how this turns into a little bit of a rout. So a couple turnovers with a great run game for Penn State.
I would agree with that. I think Nick Singleton is a big part of this game, the way they've been running the ball. We're going to get to whether they can do that or not in this game. But one last thing here that is not necessarily Penn State football related, but also is, congratulations to this guy over here. Graduated this week. Is graduation on Sunday? The ceremony itself?
It is technically tomorrow, yes, but I'm
Congratulations.
officially done. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. Appreciate Nittany Nation. Support means a lot. Thank you, guys. Obviously, really tough year for me and having to step away from football and all that, but transition into my media career has been incredible. All the support from you guys, alumni, fans, lettermen, coaches, everybody means the world to me, and I will be sticking around covering Penn State football. So you guys, Penn State sports in general. So you guys are stuck with me, and me and T. Frank, I'm sure, will be doing a lot of film breakdowns and pregame shows in the future.
Looking forward to it. Yeah, when I graduated college, I had a college radio show that was okay. That was my resume, and I think I interned at a local TV station. Having the work you have under your belt, I mean, you're already doing it. You're just officially going to be doing it here in a couple of weeks instead of just being part time.
Absolutely.
So looking forward to your career, being a little bit of a part of it, and also watching it happen. Excited for you. Excited for Penn State football. Let's talk about what happened at practice this week, what we were able to see, what we weren't able to see. All that coming up, plus his key matchup on the other side on the Penn State football tailgate show.
Get your inside look at how the Nittany Lions prepared for this week's opponent. Here's Blue White Illustrated's Penn State practice highlights, powered by the Happy Valley Sports and Entertainment Alliance.
It's the week before Christmas, and the Penn State football team is still at it. The Nittany Lions host SMU in the first round of the college football playoffs this week, which means they had open practice on Wednesday. I'm Thomas Frank Carr, and you guessed it, this is your Penn State practice update. Want to get this information about Penn State football sooner? Join Blue White Illustrated right now to get access for just $1 to try us out for a week. Or, hear me out, go all in and get someone you love a yearly subscription as a digital holiday stocking stuffer. Whether it was the same amount of time or not, things felt fast once the team let the media into practice. Part of the increased pace was a reshuffling of the order of events. Typically, on offense, the work begins on ball security drills while the offensive line works as a unit away from the main body of the team. Next, the running backs work with the quarterbacks. Then the quarterbacks work with the tight ends, and then they work with the wide receivers. This week, the receivers went first, working primarily with starting quarterback Drew Aller. Next, it was the tight ends, and before we got to the running backs, we were out of the building. Other interesting notes from practice was that the receiver room was split between the offense and practice squad working with the defense while we were in Haluba Hall. The starters were with quarterback Drew Aller and his immediate backup Ethan Gronkmeyer. The team has handled this week to week differently, but this week Tysier Denmark was with the depth players and Caden Saunders took his spot as the fifth receiver through the offensive rotation. Does that mean Saunders will finally make his first offensive debut this
smartest person at your tailgate. Get the expert's view of today's game. Here's Landon Tengwall as he gives you the key matchups. Brought to you by Stalker Chevrolet. For your next vehicle purchase, come to Stalker Chevrolet and save with low interest rates. And remember, only at Stalker Chevrolet will you get the Stalker Advantage with the purchase of any new vehicle.
Welcome back into the Penn State Football Tailgate Show. We are talking my key matchups of today, SMU at Penn State, and everybody's been talking about it. I am looking at the interior of SMU's offensive line versus the interior of Penn State's defensive line. I think that's where this game will be decided. If SMU can run the ball consistently, they can stay in this game, T. Frank. We make them one-dimensional and make Kevin Jennings try to do everything. That is where I think we get into a world where he starts, making mistakes, turnovers, and living in that realm. But if they can be 50-50 and proportionate, I don't want to live in that world. And then also talking about Brashad Smith, their running back number 1.
I'm a fan.
That is one shifty dude.
Yeah,
my.
Yeah.
So we have to get some penetration in the middle to make sure that make him bounce it outside. That was happening a lot in the Clemson game in the ACC championship. Clemson was penetrating the guards so much that they were 1 to 2 yards in the backfield.
Yeah.
And Smith is just like, oh, crap. And he just cuts it outside for like a 1 yard gain because there's really no hole out there. So if Zane Durant, if Devon J. Thomas, if Keziah Izzard can be disruptive in the middle, I think we're in a good place. SMU's tackles, I think, are both their best offensive linemen. I think the right tackle is the best. The interior 3, I'm not that big of a fan of. I think especially Zane Durant against that left guard, really like that matchup. I think the left guard is the worst one out of the 5 for SMU. Zane Durant generally gets to see that left guard a lot. Yeah. It's a great matchup. So keep an eye on that one today. And if you want to keep an eye on it, I'll be updating you on Twitter. So follow me at Landon Tengwall on Twitter. Shameless plug.
Absolutely. It's hard to see what's going on in between the tackles. You need an expert when you got the broadcast view, especially to know what's going on up front. It is helpful when a guy like Zane Durant is just alone in the backfield, when he wins and he splits a double team or he's able to shed a block, and then you know what happened. But on those other plays, I think it's important to get that context. And I agree wholeheartedly. I did some, watching the film and I did some digging in terms of like, how does this impact the offense? I think Smith does a lot to make that front better than it is. So here's an interesting stat I found, and I wrote at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com earlier this week in a preview of this offense. He has a point of attack change rate of 18%. So Landon, where the ball's supposed to go and then where it actually goes, even in zone where you have the option to bounce, like there's always an original, like here's the plan, right? And then whatever happens, then you change the point of attack. He has changed the point of attack more if he were in the Big Ten than any running back in the Big Ten.
That's about 18%?
18%. Next closest is 2% below him, which, statistically 2% is a lot as opposed to like, what you might think. So,
well, I mean, that's if you run the ball 5 times, 1 out of those 5, he's completely going somewhere else.
Yep.
And generally what that means, especially watching the SMU offensive line, is that the play got blown up where it was supposed to go. And that happened multiple times, especially going against, I don't know his name, but number 11 for Clemson. Oh my gosh, he was having a field day with SMU's interior offensive line. So I think the matchup is there. I'm a little hesitant, T. Frank, on I should be confident in my upfront O-line, D-line abilities. But after I was telling everybody, be a little nervous about Oregon's front 7, and then we just manhandled them. I mean, I will say I have so much Coach Trout, Nick Dawkins, all the boys, they are ballers. Yeah. But I was not expecting that. And no. I think coming in today, now there is the expectation, hey, if we can dominate the best front 7 in college football in Oregon, we should be able to handle SMU up front.
This is the conversation I was having. You can't ask these questions directly, but James Franklin talked about this when somebody asked, why did the game against Oregon go so well on the ground? And he said, there's some things that we did that I don't want to talk about now because it'll change the way people play us. But what they did is they went tempo. They ran tempo into run plays in order to stop Oregon from getting to the point of attack or using some of those stunts and some of those shifts that we were talking about where they would go from a 4-down front to a 3-down front and confuse the blocking. They just didn't give them any time to do that. That was one aspect of it. I'm sure there's other aspects of it. But the question I have, and I had it for Andy Kotelnicki and I had it for James Franklin, is how do you know if that's going to work again this week? An extra week of practice for SMU. They have similar body types. They will play some odd fronts. They've got a 350-pound defensive tackle that can play nose. He can play a little bit of one technique. They line him up all over, right?
94?
10.
Oh, 10.
10.
Oh, yeah, 10. They're all 10. Well, they're so deep, too. Because I was
Yes.
talking to Billy Embody, who is the on-3 specialist for SMU.
Yep.
And he basically said, first off, I've never seen a defensive line rotate more.
Yep.
I mean, they are constantly getting guys in and out. And we were talking NIL earlier, they're basically all transfers.
Yep.
And they grabbed the second stringer from Georgia,
Yep.
the third stringer from
94s
Alabama.
Georgia.
Exactly.
Yep.
The guys that just couldn't cut it in the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, they're football players, and they're making a damn good impact on SMU right now.
Yeah.
So I know, I think you're right. They're just so versatile and talented up front on that defensive line. One other thing I do want to add, why we ran the ball so well against Oregon, Tyler Warren might have been one of the best run blocking just games from a tight end I've seen in a long time. You guys generally don't get to see it, but he was burying dudes 3 yards into the Penn State sideline.
The one you showed that I thought was the most impressive, he catches a guy from the outside and throws him inside so that they get the pin and pull. That's been a weakness. And that's been a weakness of the offense. They found different ways to do that. He struggled at that block before. And to watch him do that in that situation was really impressive against the biggest, on the biggest stage against the best competition. And it's going to be interesting, as you mentioned, running the ball and being balanced on offense is the key for either of these teams. So let's talk a little bit more about the SMU offense, and let's take care of the defense, then we'll switch to the offense in our next segment. When it comes to the quarterback option game, I'm interested how that folds into the plan today, because there have been times Will Howard is a good runner. He's not an elite runner. But Penn State wasn't prepared for him running the football, I think, as much as he did in the game against Ohio State. He was able to get outside a couple of times. Penn State feels generally more aware of Kevin Jennings as a runner. I don't know that's his dominant strength is in the quarterback option game, but he can be a problem. So when you're talking about the run game, and you mentioned the interior, but there are ways to get outside, and it feels like SMU does everything they can to get outside. How important is it this week? This is a dumb question, but missed tackles to me in space feel like a big priority for this defense.
Well, yeah, that's what you saw in Oregon. And I was talking to a couple people. They said, by the way, and I put this out on Twitter. I hadn't talked to any guys about it. The turf in the Big Ten championship was incredibly slippery. And then you add on Tez Johnson. It's not very easy.
Right.
But, we have struggled. Tony Rojas, obviously, at times. Really, the linebackers in general. Kobe King is actually the highest graded linebacker in the playoffs from PFF. Mm-hmm. So he's been playing better. And as we talked about, Kobe King's superpower is when the season goes on, because he just continues to get better.
He's like the reverse running back on the other side, right?
Exactly. But like I said, I'm looking at guys like Zakee Wheatley, Tony Rojas, Jay Reed come down, make those tackles, those broken tackles that just add 4 or 5 yards. They're demoralizing. That's how you do not get off the field. You want to keep guys, you want that to be 2nd and 8. Suddenly that 2nd and 8 is a broken tackle becomes 2nd and 2. Yeah. Completely different game. You're working the sticks completely differently. So it is uberly important that we have a good day tackling, because as you mentioned, I think in the Clemson game, they ran 6 to 7 end around jet sweeps, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. They did 2 double end arounds. One that was a double end around flea flicker. One was a double end around where the wide receiver passed it. It was one of the worst things I've ever seen. But basically, they are going, they know, they realize that we are more talented than them. We have more skill. Yeah. Okay, how do you combat that? Generally, you go to the kind of trick play, get in space, get the speed out there. That's kind of what USC was trying to do a little bit this year.
Win leverage because of deception, as opposed to winning leverage because you're bigger, faster, and stronger. Exactly. You can execute a basic plan better than the other team. And that is, it's funny because Penn State does that, and they're also the better team a lot of times. That's Andy Kotelnicki. Like, you're trying to grab space and trying to grab gaps, but every once in a while it feels like they're playing like a team that doesn't have an offensive line that averages 315 to 320 pounds. At the same time, I think they've gotten back to running the football a little more between the tackles. The next aspect of this, and by the way, I just one thing I wanted to clean up here. I think I was a little too hard on Kobe King after the Oregon game in the Big Ten championship, because I've seen them be so aggressive downhill. And I want to say it was not his best game overall, but when you consider the number of RPOs they started to throw and the fact that I thought he was kind of indecisive, he has to hold that ground, because if he immediately attacks, then that's going to be something that opens up a big window for Tez Johnson, which is what happened in the second quarter. That is what happened, is they started going to the RPO game because they were so successful on the ground. Fans have talked about that of like, oh, you got to protect the middle. You got to protect the middle. Last time that this defense gave up gobs of yards over the middle. And the question to me, Landon, is we've talked about this now, setting up the conversation about the run game and the relative weakness of the interior of the SMU offensive line. Those RPOs are set up by the run. The threat and the presence of not just running the football from a, hey, we're handing the ball off, but the success of the front. Can SMU replicate that and challenge Penn State over the middle?
They can. I don't think they will,
okay.
but they have the ability to. Like you said, they are not Oregon, and that was the number one thing you saw from the defense and why we got killed over the middle. Number one, I was talking to someone, I won't say who, but it was a parent, and they said that Tez Johnson was the fastest human being they've ever seen in their life.
Yeah.
So that
he can opt out of contact at the college level. I've never you rarely see that.
It's frankly just it's really amazing. And just for today, I don't know. I think that the defensive backs, if we can, not get sucked in by that play action, if the linebackers can't get sucked, because that's what we saw. Yep. There was a couple times that Dylan Gabriel just got just enough space because of the play action fake. It grabs Akee Wheatley, it grabbed Jalen Reed, it grabbed Kobe King, and sucks them into the line of scrimmage. Because as you said, if the run game is efficient, well, as a linebacker, I'm like, shoot, I got to stop, run first, boom. Yep. And then I'm like, oh, crap, turn around. And I have a guy that runs a 4.2 running a deep crosser behind me.
Who runs a 4.2 in every direction.
Exactly.
Oh, my gosh.
It's not easy at all. So that is the number one thing. And if you start to shut that down, if Zane Durant and Devon J. Thomas are just controlling dudes and keeping, 1-2 yard gains just themselves, while the linebackers feel a little bit better getting into their drops, getting back there. But if it's crap, my guys are getting manhandled up front, well, I feel like I'm going to need to add on a little bit quicker, and then it allows you to throw it right over the linebackers, in between the linebackers and the safety. So that is definitely something that we need to be focused on today. And I think we had a lot of miscommunication, T. Frank. Not I think. I know we did, starting play 1 against Oregon.
Yep.
It was bad. And
we haven't talked about all these things. I feel like we're just doing therapy on the air. We're like the X's and O's therapy of like, what was that? How do you not because Denied Dennis Sutton saw it immediately. They're in tackle over, and nobody paid attention to him.
It's one of the crazy.
Nobody looked over.
Deni's screaming at Zane on the first play. Go check it out on my YouTube channel at Behind the Wall with Landon Tengwall. I did the breakdown of it.
That's a Kobe thing too. He's got to be aware of that. He can see it because Zane is here.
It's not even Deni's job technically. I mean, it is, but like Kobe needs to see it and like bark out orders because he is standing back. He is the quarterback of the defense, and 2 plays in a row, Oregon comes out tackle over. Deni's looking at Zane saying, come on, bump over. Yeah. Zane doesn't bump, and he's just like, no. Deni then jumps into the B gap to take that gap to make sure we just don't get gash up the middle. And then no one in the C gap. Akee Wheatley's trying to fill the C gap from 15 yards out. They gash us for 12 yards.
And then they go tempo.
And that is, you were mentioning tempo earlier with Penn State. And I think something that's like interesting talking about us running that tempo offense is that is why the run game worked, but it's even more important today against SMU, in my opinion. SMU loves twist and stunts. That's when the D-lines,
that's how they get pressure.
They're picking, they're looping. That's their pressure. And it's not even just run game. I mean, they do it all the time. Now, how you stop that is you run tempo. And then also if they try to do a stunt in tempo, oh my God, that can get fun. That's when they're tired. That's when the looper and the penetrator don't do well. You kind of get walled off, and then there's just a gaping hole for Nick Singleton to take off. So that is what I will say. When a defensive line runs all these stunts and twists, it gives the opportunity. Yes, you might get a couple extra TFLs, but it's dangerous because you're moving and replacing gaps. And if a guy gets caught and sealed off, there is just a clear path for the running back. So I wouldn't be shocked if we saw a Nick Singleton breaking one off. Now, obviously, I still don't think he's 100%. I don't know if he ever will be for the rest of this season. Yeah. Because we've seen him kind of in open space, and it doesn't necessarily look like he can, like, take off.
He's got enough of it, though.
Yes.
He's got enough of it back, and I think that's the important thing, that he's back to a position where he is a explosive football player. He was fast before, but he wasn't explosive. We got to take a quick break here, but I want to clean up. I want to get to a couple things. There's so many things. We didn't even talk about Kevin Jennings extending the play, which we're probably going to have to come back and do like a quarterback analysis 1-to-1 when we talk about the Penn State offense. But this, you mentioned doing a lot of stunts and a lot of twists. That is what they want to do on defense with SMU, is they don't blitz a whole lot. In fact, if they blitz, it's more of a dire situation. They don't like to do that. They want to play coverage with 5'11" linebackers and have guys running and running to the football in space. So communication up front is very important. They blitz less than 20% of the time. But in terms of the athletes up front, and this is what I started out the show with, like, are you sure this is a great pass rush? Because their best pass rusher, again, we talked about this with Oregon. It's also the ability and the matchup that is important to whether a guy is going to get home. It's not just the stats. It's not just those things. 267-pound Elijah Roberts is their best pass rusher from like an overall perspective. He is not a speed player. 58 is their one speed player that I think could be a problem, but we've seen enough from this offensive line that if you don't have overwhelming speed to the outside, Nolan Rucci's improved to the point that he's hard to get around. At 6'8", long arms, he's not bending and ducking as much anymore. So if he has a good game, this feels like an opportunity for Penn State to block that pass rush and to be able to get there. From the defensive side of the ball, I think on Penn State's side of the ball, we've talked about this with Abdul Carter. That's one area where I'm interested to see, and I want to get your thoughts quickly here about Abdul Carter. We had this conversation on the BWI live show earlier this week. Would you use him as a spy, or would you use him to go after the quarterback, knowing that if Jennings does break the pocket, it's a problem, and you need your best athlete to track him down in space almost more than getting the original pressure?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I think there's a little bit of a misconception. Kevin Jennings does not take off that much. He is and I said this to you, my comp is Deshaun Watson, a little more washed. Deshaun Watson, but he wants to run around, create time. He is an improviser. I love Coach. I think it was just a compliment. But James Franklin basically said he's Lamar Jackson. I couldn't disagree more. He does not have a Lamar Jackson skill set at all. It's very Deshaun Watson-esque. He wants to run around, create time, create plays, and he has found himself making mistakes in those moments, but also making some plays that your jaw is on the floor. Yeah. There's no way he just did that. Rolling left, gets his hips back around, spins back, tosses 120 yards on a dime. So he can do both of those, but I genuinely really don't think he takes off that much. He had 10 rushes versus Clemson. 7 to 8 of them were designed runs. So the rushes and the yards that he gains are from those designed runs. He had a really nice QB counter against Clemson that he took for a 30-yard touchdown. So that is where we need to be a little more conscious. I think Abdul Carter just straight up rushing him, trying to wreak havoc, will get us further than Abdul trying to track him down. And hopefully Tony Rojas can show off some of that, very quick speed, that closing speed. That I think we have a couple guys that are special. Micah had it. I think absolutely Abdul has it, and I think Tony has some of it in him, not the same level that Abdul has, where you just see Abdul put his foot in the ground, and it's like, oh my God, he got there in 2 steps. But Tony has some of that, so I think Tony can track down Kevin Jennings, but I would leave Abdul Carter one-on-one with Savion Byrd, who is SMU's left tackle. I love that matchup.
Yep. We're going to talk about more, including Drew Aller in the offense, and maybe some more of the quarterback comparison we talked about in just a little bit. For people on the radio side of things, you're going to hear the Coach's Corner. For people here on the YouTube channel, once again, the technology got me. Behind the scenes, there's a whole bunch of things that happened between yesterday and today with our software. So I don't have our normal video mirroring of the radio station. So you're going to get James Franklin talking about Kevin Jennings looking like Lamar Jackson, and then we'll get to a break. That's coming up here on the Tailgate Show. We'll be back, driven by Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships on 99.5, 107.5 The Bus, Bigfoot Country Legends, and streaming on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel.
Lamar. We haven't played the Ravens, the Baltimore Ravens, but that's who he reminds me of. Athletic, can extend plays, can make big plays, does a really good job of keeping his eyes down the field. I think that's his style of play. I don't know if we have anybody else that we have played this year that's similar to him. But he reminds me, his game really reminds me a lot of Lamar Jackson. Lamar.
SMU Mustangs, however, the State College Week has been full of
Thank you very much. Welcome to the stream now. Sorry about that. Muted. See, this happens all the time on our live shows. It's just I'm never the one to do it. So it's just
It's all right.
Technology, man. Like there are so many words I want to say that all start with F, and I can't. Let's talk about Penn State, and let's talk about this quarterback battle, because I think there's a fair conversation to say who has the better quarterback in this game, given the way that Kevin Jennings plays and the maybe uneven nature of Drew Aller in terms of the high highs. I don't think Kevin Jennings can match that, but does he consistently play within himself and make all that happen? When you're assessing that, where do you land in the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, just for those that don't know, I think a good chunk of the audience, I never did not watch a SMU game at all this year. So you don't know too much about Kevin Jennings. There is talk already that he could be one of the Heisman guys next year, given the right tools and all of that stuff. So just giving you that background. Yes, I think there is a world where Kevin Jennings can absolutely outplay Drew Aller today. Mm-hmm. That is it's definitely within the realm of possibility. And I also think that's more of SMU's game plan, that they need Kevin Jennings to have a day.
Yeah.
We don't really need Drew Aller to have a day. I think everybody agrees if we can win on the ground game, that is the best way for us to win. Now, Drew Aller's still going to sling it around a little bit. But I don't know. I guess I don't see a world where Kevin Jennings necessarily will play better today, but it's there. The opportunity's there. Right. I just think the circumstances of Abdul Carter trying to hunt him down, the DBs that have really played pretty well for Penn State. Obviously, I know Oregon wasn't the greatest game over the middle, but A.J. Harris, lockdown.
Let's talk about that matchup, though, because I think that's an interesting thing where we discuss Kevin Jennings, but we don't really talk about the receivers. And I was told early on, at least I kind of got the information that they have some athletes, right? They have some athletes outside, was what I was told. I go and I watch the film. I don't see dynamic separation. I see a good offense, good receivers. I see guys that have good hands, as you mentioned, I think, during the break. But I don't see guys that are going to threaten Penn State's DBs. Do you see anything different there?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. They had 2 injuries because you go and look, they don't have a single receiver, tight end either, over 600-yard receiving. One guy is at 599. They lost their slot wide receiver, who was their best wide receiver, Jake Bailey. He got hurt early in the season. And then kind of their star. They had a star at tight end in R.J. Maryland, also out for the year with injuries. So they have kind of gotten hit by that injury bug. Penn State has too. So, hey, you can't say mess. We probably lost maybe our best player outside of Abdul Carter in KJ Winston. So everybody's dealing with it. But they are a little bit depleted from where they started the season. I will tell you this too. Last ACC championship 2 weeks ago, they played their coldest game of the year in North Carolina. Their graphics team put up the graphic was like them trekking into like the Arctic for a game in North Carolina. And I'm like, okay, no, that's not North Carolina, but yes, that makes sense. You from Texas would think that North Carolina is like the Arctic. That makes sense. And so, coming to this game, so the ACC game, they have like 5 or 6 drops from their wide receiver.
Yep.
They had like 5 or 6 all year. That has not been a problem. So there is the possibility you could say that these guys could have some drop problems with the cold today. I don't think it's out of the realm. I can't necessarily, the cold is the reason why they had drop problems in the ACC championship.
Right.
But at the same time, we know how recruiting works. Guys generally go back to their regions. You stay in your region. And now with the transfer portal, guys actually even get closer to home. These guys are Texas dudes. They like the heat. They like the warmth. They were practicing in 72 degree weather in shorts this week. And now welcome into 10-degree, snowing, chilly.
Real feel with the wind.
Real feel, valley wind. No, people don't talk about the valley wind. When that wind gets trapped in the valley here,
I talked about it on the last show we did outside.
That's a good point.
I absolutely talked about it because you're up there on that hill, on a hill in the valley, and then you have all of the other like structures that are around the stadium that funnel the wind in. And that's the thing is like you can be in like cold. It can be 10 degrees. And if it's still, your body creates an envelope around you. When the wind is whipping Landon and you're out there because you've got to prove your masculinity without any sleeves on it as an offensive lineman, I assume it hits very different, literally, when you hit somebody else.
You know what's interesting? It does. And as offensive line, if you're playing, you're not allowed to wear sleeves. That's like law.
Yeah.
Notre Dame last night came out, a lot of them came out shirtless for that game to warm up. I think that's one of the dumbest things ever. Will we see SMU players shirtless today? That's the question. Bunch of Texas boys. I don't know.
They're going to come out and prove how it doesn't bother them.
Exactly. And then no matter what, and then they'll lose, and then they'll also have the flu on Monday. Oh man.
So it's the thing with getting back to the kind of the conversation about the receivers, the DBs, Penn State in the last game, and again, I don't want to keep going back to the Oregon game because I think there are so many variables there that are clearly different than this game in terms of the opponent. But Penn State couldn't play as much of their defense against Oregon because if you thought zone was bad, if they had matched up man-to-man with Evan Stewart and Tez Johnson out there and tried to play their style of defense the whole game, that would not have gone well. That would have gone worse, honestly. So I think they can play their game. You talked about A.J. Harris being a lockdown corner, Jalen Kimber having a lockdown performance this year. Those guys can get back to where they've been playing in this particular game. And then the variable is going to be Jennings throwing those jump balls. Super accurate quarterback. He's done very good at that this year. That's where this offense is a lot of dink and dunk. It's a lot of short passes. If it weren't for Jennings, I think this would be kind of a toothless offense. But with him, he pushes the ball down the field enough that he makes it a dynamic threat of the whole field.
Yeah, something you just mentioned, it just triggered. It was it was when I watch a game, I make, when I'm doing a film study of like the preview, I go and look and I say, okay, I make 4 main cut-ups. What are the 4 main things? One of the 4 for me from this SMU offense was he just chucks the ball up. The amount of 50-50 balls that Kevin Jennings throws up is actually crazy for the lack of, great talent he has at wide receiver and tight end. He would throw some up to the tight end. So there's going to be 50-50 balls. Hopefully Zakee Wheatley's out there. I think Jalen Reed is someone who didn't necessarily have the best game in the Big Ten championship. There was miscommunication. There was all that going on, but overall did not have a great game. I have talked to him. Obviously, he wants to as the kids say, get their lick back. And he wants to have...
I've never heard that one before.
Never heard that one? Yeah, okay. Well, we'll have you using that shortly, T. Frank.
We're going to have an etymology discussion of how that comes about, because I don't know if I want to have that on air in case it goes in a direction I don't want it to, because I don't know if I'm just a pervert, but it goes a very different way for me than it does probably just for anybody else.
It is pretty amazing how, things we say now are just completely...
You say bet in text all the time, and I had to get used to that. I'm not that old, but I'm that old now.
You are. Welcome, T. Frank. Welcome. So I like Jalen Reed. I think he's going to be playing with a chip on his shoulder. But yes, there is going to be so many opportunities for turnovers. I'm calling my shot right now. It's worked out before on this pregame show. Kevin Jennings will have 2 turnovers today.
Oh, wow. Yeah, go back to the Manny Diaz game. That's where I saw, I think, a blueprint. And again, this is the conversation of, can you just copy and paste what somebody else did? Because they've seen that now. And yes, it caused them problems, but do they have a foil for that plan?
Is James Franklin ringing up an old friend this past week?
Is Rhett Lashley ringing up an old friend, his former boss at Miami?
That's a good point.
There are a lot of connections in this game between the two staffs.
Where did Manny Diaz go with that? Oh,
yeah.
I got to know.
Right? Who's he favor?
Yeah,
his former boss or his former employee?
I would generally say, I think Manny would help out Penn State right now because all of the guys right now are still his guys that are playing. And I think there's a little more of a connection there than his former employee.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say.
I would also say that Penn State went hot and heavy after a couple of Duke linebackers this offseason.
That's a good point.
In recruiting. And, I'm sure there's a good relationship, but it doesn't feel good when somebody takes Cam Smith from you in the transfer or in recruiting and is going after Bradley Gompers late as well. Let's flip the script and talk about the receivers for Penn State, who had a better game to end the season, a little more dynamism from that group. Part of the conversation was the injury to Trey Wallace and the fact that Amari Evans had a game where he had to be the number 1 wide receiver, but it feels like there's a little more balance out there from the Penn State receivers and from Drew Aller throwing the ball into some more situations, being more aggressive with it. My biggest question about this game, what's the aggression level from Drew Aller? Does he come out and play like he did against Oregon, or was that game plan specific of we're going to need to score a lot of points? Again, I'm going back to the matchup, the personnel, and the environment. Does Penn State feel like they need to score 40 points to win this game? And which version of Drew Aller comes out today?
God, I would love it if we saw Oregon. If we saw the offense we saw against Oregon. If we saw Drew Aller play loose and the way he did against Oregon. That's why I was okay with that interception at the end of the game. Yeah. Because that is how he played the entire game. They played loose, they took risk, and a lot of times it worked out for them. If we can play like that, it could be really fun today, and I think we could even get our eyes on Ethan Grunkemeyer if we play like that today. Do I think we will? I don't know. I mean, hey, you tuned in for my opinion, so guess what? I'm going to say probably not. I don't think we will play that loose. I think we're going to try to run the ball. I think we'll get back to, Tyler Warren is just going to get the ball 2 times on the first drive, and that'll be an emphasis, I think, without Bo Pula. And I know we're talking wide receivers, but without Bo Pula, Coach Franklin said we're basically going to still use the package. It's too big of our offense. Yeah. We're just going to use different chess pieces. What does that mean to me? Tyler Warren's going to get 44 is going to get 6 to 8 snaps at quarterback because we have seen Nick Singleton, Katron Allen early on in the year have to try to go to quarterback basically every time and ended in a false start. And I'll tell you, or a fumble. And I'll tell you why that happens is because as an offensive lineman, as a tight end, the guys on the front line, you are used to Drew Aller. This is the cadence. Ready, go. That's the cadence. Yeah. So now, okay, Tyler Warren's going to get a bunch of snaps. Okay, now I got to it's the same cadence, but a different voice and a different clap. Yep. Now it's Tyler Warren. Ready, go. It might get held a little bit longer. That's just how Tyler does it. Now we got a Nick Singleton. Ready, go. That's it. I love Nick, but voice, not as assertive. He's not used to giving a cadence. Yeah. Tyler Warren was a quarterback, and it's like, okay, that's all so different. That is why we've gotten away from that, and that is why I predict all those snaps will go to Tyler. I don't think there'll be a lot. Maybe a Nick Singleton snap, but
here's another thing that I think we haven't talked about enough, and I didn't get a chance to ask Nick Dawkins this the other day, but when they've had structural and procedural issues, it's because Drew Aller's actually running the offense. He's giving the cadence, and he's not lined up under center. He's like at a wingback position, or he's in the slot trying to yell to the center to start the offense because they were trying to avoid those things. And then I was wondering, is it harder? What's the best angle? With your helmet holes and everything to hear the snap.
That was the USC problem. Yeah. He was giving the cadence from the wing tight end position. And guess what? The left tackle, he's really used to hearing it, right off his right butt inside pretty much. Now he's hearing it all the way on the other side, and there is false starts and all that good stuff. I think Tyler Warren will get a lot of snaps at quarterback.
We're going to come back, and we're going to take a look around something or other, I think, is our next segment, right? We're free and loose today here on the show. We're going to just talk more about this game and maybe recap some of the things we saw last night. If Penn State advances, they could possibly see Notre Dame. So we'll talk about a little bit of that and a little bit of this, a little bit of everything. I want to talk some more about this defensive structure because I think it's super interesting. And I think it plays into everything we just talked about in terms of Drew Aller and his ability to sling the ball around Beaver Stadium today. But we'll be back here on the Tailgate Show, powered by Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships on 99.5, 107.5 The Bus, Bigfoot Country Legends, and streaming on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel.
See what's happening around the Big Ten. Brought to you by Valley View Retirement Community. Enrich your life on Valley View Retirement Community's 50-plus acre campus in Big Valley, PA. Award-winning residential, personal care, skilled nursing, rehab, and memory care for older adults.
Welcome back to the Penn State Football Tailgate Show. I'm Thomas Frank Carr, Landon Tengwall, former Penn State offensive lineman with me. If you're checking us out on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel, you can see our festive holiday sweaters. We're in the holiday spirit here. Just a couple days before Christmas, Ryan sheared on our YouTube channel says happy holidays and Merry Christmas, gents. Really appreciate all the work that goes into Blue White Illustrated. And, of course, Landon over on his Behind the Wall podcast. He says, let's get locked in and get the dub today. #we are. Appreciate Ryan and all of you. And, you know, I'm not going to get mushy here yet. We're going to do that later. About the support and the people that always show up here for these shows. You don't have to do that, and I thank you so much for all that stuff, including Ryan, who's a regular here on the show. Let's talk about around the Big Ten, which they're in my head last night, right as the game was starting between Notre Dame and Indiana. I'm like, you could have 3 of the final 4 teams be Big Ten teams. It could be just like another Big Ten championship game to end the year as the national championship. And then they kicked the ball off and some things happened for Notre Dame. What was your assessment of that particular performance last night from the Hoosiers and from the Golden Dome?
Yeah, Curt Cignetti was not ready. He wasn't ready, T. Frank.
Whoa.
First off, I'm pissed off about it. You go on College Game Day 2 hours before you're about to go play a game and say that he basically said we beat the crap out of top 25 teams.
Mm-hmm.
We don't just beat them. Well, no, you don't, first off. You actually don't. And now you just got whooped on national TV, and you're lucky that the score shows 27-17, so the history books don't show just a whooping. But it was basically 3-27.
Yeah, they scored 14 points in the fourth quarter, well after I went to bed.
Yeah, and then you go ahead, and you're down 3 scores with 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter in the college football playoffs, end of the season. And what does Curt Cignetti do? He punts the ball on like 4th and 7. You don't deserve to be there. I was so against the 3-loss SEC teams, but now I'm with ESPN and the rest of the talking heads.
Yeah.
They messed it up, I guess. I don't know. Kirk, that was just an awful showing for a guy that's so confident and like walks around like chest out. And I mess with it. Yeah. I have a ton of friends that went to JMU. They loved Curt Cignetti. They're so happy for him. But like to do that and then coach that game like that,
yeah,
it looked like they weren't even ready. First off, like, and then you go and the coaching decisions were awful, and I can't get over. Like I said, going on College Game Day 2 hours before kickoff and basically talking trash as a head coach, is one of the craziest moves I've ever seen.
Yeah,
I don't understand it. I don't get why he did that, and James Franklin would never do that. I can promise you that.
Yeah. He's got his pregame ritual, and it involves walking around the stadium, not going on game day. And here's the thing, to total tangent, Bill Belichick getting the Nick Saban treatment of just being able to go on game day and having a 10-minute commercial for North Carolina football, that always bothers me. Like, just the access and the opportunity you get for being somebody and knowing somebody. Like, I know that's how the world works, but also that's also gross. Like, it's gross to watch. No, I don't enjoy watching Bill Belichick go there and like him and Nick Saban having a verbal hug for 10 minutes.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. There's like pictures going viral of Bill Belichick, and he's in like a gray hoodie, jeans, and like some like dirty shoes with like a cup of coffee, and he's like watching recruits, like new transfers, like sign their like NIL agreements.
Yeah,
and he's just like sitting there like this, like looks tired, and is just like. Yeah, got another one. And it was just like, I can't imagine being recruited by Bill Belichick. I might just have to enter the transfer portal, T. Frank, just to feel it.
Yeah.
Just to feel it. And I will say, I don't think I said this on the show, but I got a text like when the transfer portal opened like 3 weeks ago. I think it's kind of the natural process of me like getting out of my name, like out of like the NCAA portal. But my name was in the transfer portal like 2 weeks ago. Yeah, I got a text from like a UNC head coach before Bill Belichick went.
Oh, okay.
This was like 3 weeks. It was like UNC, a couple other places, and they had told me that my name was technically in the portal. They're like, just checking. Like, we know your situation, but like, are you? And I was like, no. I was like, no, I appreciate it. And then I was thinking like, I should have said like, how much were you going to offer? Like, why did I not ask that? Because maybe Maybe, guys.
Yeah.
I don't know. If I
Here's the thing: like, you can get like an advance or a down payment on an NIL deal, and then be like, you
Just
know
come
what,
back.
I couldn't. It didn't work. I tried.
didn't work out. I enjoyed Penn State media too much. I'm back with T. Frank.
Let's preview a little bit of today. What do you got? You got
Yeah.
something here. You got
Yeah,
something
no.
better than I had.
I want to talk. Listen, Clemson, Texas. I watched. We'll just talk the other two games outside of SMU Penn State. We'll come back to SMU Penn State in 1 second. I watched a ton of Clemson because the ACC championship game, Clemson and SMU played each other. Let's see. This line is at 13.5 right now. I think Clemson's going to lose by 21 or more. I genuinely don't think they're a good team. I think Dabo really not wanting to go into the portal. Listen, I appreciate that. That is good. You're trying to keep college football as what it was as a whole, and I love that.
The principle of it.
Yes, the principle of college football. But Dabo, you might have to start to catch up, man, because I think Texas is going to give them a whooping.
Yeah.
Outside of if Quinn Ewers just kind of has a bad day.
Just kind of melts down.
And we were talking about this. It's one of the most interesting conversations of where we are at now in college football. Quinn Ewers is pretty much guaranteed that he is entering the transfer portal. That is basically what has been decided. He knows it's Arch Manning's team next year.
Mm-hmm.
So you have this Texas team that is, the number 5 rated team. They're the highest non-conference winner. And now it's like your star quarterback is like known to be leaving, and he's gonna leave the guys.
It's like if Bo Pula was the starter, and that is odd.
Yeah, it's like weird. Like, okay, he's leading us into battle, but I know this guy's leaving, and there's just such a big difference between a guy going into the transfer portal and a guy leaving for the NFL.
Here's something that I've been thinking for a while. Is there, the origins of football are all militaristic, right? Like, a lot of these things were born in a different generation, different time, right after World War II, and all these historical things that don't matter. But they do have this very deep-seated us versus them, as you just mentioned, leading them into battle. And then it's a business. And I think that's why a lot of people like that I don't want to call it a lie, but that spirit of that was still alive in college football of it's us versus them. This is a team. This is a family. This is about football. It's about the game. It's not about the business, even though the business was just operating over everybody's head. Now the business has filtered down to the full staff, and I think that's more fair, but it also has changed that, where you have this idea that it's a business decision, but you have the spirit of the game, which is all about combat. And it just creates this kind of uncomfortable thing, especially outright disgusting thing for fans that want it to be the way it used to be. But if you grew up like me and you were NFL first, it doesn't bother you, but it is obvious. It is very obvious watching something go from what it was to the thing it was. When I went to school, in all the way back in the day.
Back in my day.
All the way back in 2008. It felt a little bit more like you're going into the 13th grade. Like, college football, even then, was a gigantic machine. But the veneer of this is collegiate, this is closer to the Olympics, we're doing this for the love of the sport, that was all still that was a very thick layer of polyurethane over what was happening. And now it's just it's been sanded off and we're trying something new. And I think these situations, I like woodworking, okay? I'm going to use the analogies that pop into my brain. These situations, especially at quarterback, are starting to be the first things kind of poking their head out to be the new reality that we have in college football.
Yeah, it's a weird time. And then, the weirdest part, this is the transition period. We have not gotten to where we are going to be with NIL. This is the weird in the middle time. So I guess enjoy it before it goes all the way, just money all around. And we're already there, but enjoy the pureness while it's still here a little bit.
We're going to get into more of the game, our predictions, our expectations. I cannot believe we're at the end of the show already. This has been wild. We're going to be coming back here with our predictions, like I said, and then I still want to talk a little bit more about what I think, maybe my X factor, my bold prediction in this game. It involves Drew Aller, and it involves why he's coming back to college football and why I think if he were still play well, the NFL is open to him. But Kevin Payne here with a great donation to the channel. Always appreciate Kevin here. And wow, thank you very much. He says Merry Christmas. And here's to a Happy New Year as well. That, all the support we get here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel helps us quite a bit. And of course, I want to say thank you here. We're just going to leak the thank yous out instead of doing them all at the end. I want to thank Seven Mountains Media for making this all possible, doing this tailgate show in conjunction with them. And of course, with Landon, that we can do these things and we can have this conversation. You get to hear on the radio, interacting with fans. We get to have, everyone gets to play together in the same playpen. I enjoy this so much, and I'm glad we get to do this. It's been one of my favorite things that we've done here this year so far with Penn State football. And it's not over yet because we're coming back with our predictions, like I said, next on the Penn State Football Tailgate Show on 99.5, 107.5 The Bus, Bigfoot Country Legends, and streaming on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel.
Please.
Welcome back to the Penn State Football Tailgate Show. I'm Thomas Frankar, Landon Tengwall with me as we talk Penn State, SMU, diagnosing what we think is going to happen based on what we've seen on film. And now we have to put our name to it and put a number to it, Landon. Let's start with predictions, then get into maybe how that happens. What's your prediction for this final score here between Penn State and SMU in the first round playoff game?
34-17 Penn State. We will go. Oh, did I take you? Did I take yours?
Yes.
Oh,
exact numbers.
Really?
Numbers. We'll get into.
I'm going to be honest. Like, I've been asked like 5 times this week. I've like went back and forth anywhere between like 28 to 34. I think I've given, and I've kept SMU right around like 13 to 17. So that is what my idea is of where this will be. I think we'll go into halftime tied up 3, maybe up
Close.
7,
Yeah.
and then just second half. I think that is where we will pull away. I think that is where the run game can just get consistent, and that is where you can make SMU quit. It's going to be cold. You get down by 2 touchdowns. Now, granted, everybody's saying, hey, look what they did against Clemson. They were down like 17 and came back. I get that, but I've made it clear I don't think Clemson is really that good when it comes down to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we can demoralize them on the ground game, make them make a couple mistakes. We talked about how to make Kevin Jennings, their quarterback, uncomfortable, take away that interior offensive line, the ability to run the ball up the middle, and I think we can have a good day. But the way this turns into a little bit of a rout, a blowout, couple turnovers, you give Drew Aller and company the ball in plus territory, and the run game gets going, and you are living in a great world if you're Penn State.
KJ Johnson's a blowout in a whiteout, 38-13 elite game day threads. Happy holidays, gentlemen. Yeah, they're wearing the generations of greatness. They can't go full whiteout, white on white, which would be cool. But I think the generations of greatness in this game is a cool idea and the smart one to do for when you're on this national stage. Everybody's watching. You got to have your A game. And I think those uniforms, there's a cool factor to those, even if they are retro and not, they're not the blackout uniforms or whatever. My official prediction is 34-20. I had 34-17, and then James Franklin made his Lamar Jackson comment, and I was like, well, hold on a second. I added that. Essentially, what I did is I went back and I watched the Louisville game, and I watched I think Kevin Jennings is dynamic, and he has the ability to generate plays out of structure. So you can be totally right on a play and then just be wrong because he can throw, as you mentioned, crossbody going the wrong way. He can run the ball, but everyone's fast in a straight line when you don't have anyone in front of you. And I just think that Penn State's going to be in front of them, as you mentioned, all day long. So, yeah, 34-20. And I think that there's a bigger opportunity for Penn State to get a blowout because Drew Aller against this defense. I've said this a couple times here on the YouTube channel, and I'll say it to you here on the radio station just because I want everyone on the same page. This defense, at least what they've done this year, is they do a lot of things kind of like Andy Kotelnicki to disguise. 3 safeties, rotating all over the field, moving players, everyone around the football, but it all ends in the same place, basically. Most of it is cover 3. And while it's not Penn State's best that they've done against this year, they have eviscerated quarters. Drew Aller knows how to diagnose a defense. And if you give him the same end picture, he can see through all of the rotations. Only one team has really confused him this year in terms of he threw the ball in the wrong spot against UCLA a couple of times. Other than that, he knows where to go with the football. Tyler Warren, Nick Singleton, all those guys can be big today. But I also think because you're playing off corners, you're playing soft cover 3. The receivers are part of the conversation as well. And yeah, people have talked to me about the corners not being very good. They're cover 3 corners. It's designed that way. They don't have to be the best athletes in the world because they have a specific job and role. So what are the X factors in this game from both coordinators bringing something extra to the table because they've had this extra week to prepare? I trust Andy Kotelnicki to do that. And I said that in the championship game, and we kind of got that. So final thoughts here, Landon, from you on the Penn State Tailgate show.
Yeah, run the ball. We need a couple Nick Singleton explosives. The offensive line needs to dominate up front. I don't think it is a necessity for Trey Wallace and Amari Evans to get involved, but I would like a deep shot. I don't think against cover 3, you're not going to get a ton of deep shots. We talked there are soft zones that Drew Aller can thread the needle. The wide receivers will find that soft space, sit down, get them the ball. On the defensive side, Abdul Carter, get after Kevin Jennings, make his life hard, and then dominate on the interior for that defensive line, and Penn State will have a good day.
Neither of us think this is the last time that we're going to be doing this, but there's always the possibility that we're just bleeping wrong, right? So I just want to say this here on the show as we get out of here because it's the holiday season. You should be thankful for certain things in your life, and I want to thank everyone here at Seven Mountains Media. I should have written down everybody's name that needs to be recognized, but everyone from Jerry Valeri, operations manager, on down, general manager here at Seven Mountains Media, Dustin Getz, the technical director and audio wizard who helped set all this up at the beginning of the season, Jason Lord, everybody else. But really, I need to thank Kyle Leff, our producer and the sports director here. This doesn't happen without Kyle. And the ability that he has shown to rally people and get them in the place they need to be is amazing. But we're coming back. We're doing this again for another bowl game. We'll talk to you next time on the Penn State Tailgate Show.
Merry Christmas.